Hello, guys. Today, my guest is Anna Cocklanes Rollins. Anna is a B&B host and is author of Airbnb Investor Style, which also can be found on Amazon. Anna's story is very unique about how she got involved in the short-term rental industry. And she's literally taken the baton of short-term rental and run with it with a sprint. For those of us who want to scale our businesses very quickly, you cannot go wrong listening to this interview. There's been a lot of challenges with long-term rental, the recession, and everything else. And all of a sudden, B&B has gained traction and it's become the bushfire in the property investment market, real estate investment market. And everybody seems to be jumping the bandwagon. And so I got involved in it, refurbished two of my properties. So I do really like to research the industry I'm in and everything else. And so I decided to do an expert's best practice video, which is this one, just for people to share their stories and the experiences, the good, the bad, and the ugly about short-term rental. So basically, what I want to find out from you is what you're doing at the moment or before you got into the rental market, and what brought you into the short-term rental market.
Sure. So about 3 years ago, and I actually wrote a book about this because it's a funny story.
You have a book?
I do. I have a book about
about
how I got into this, but also, you know, how it's grown over the years. But so about 3 years ago, I quit my job and I did not have a plan of what I was going to do after I quit my job. I quit my job because I was running it like a business owner and only getting paid like an employee. And I just had this light bulb moment of, you know what? I really do think I can start my own business. I already am, and I'm just not getting compensated for it. And so I did. I said, I'm going to start my own business, but I had zero plan of what I was going to do, and kind of quickly got myself into a position where I really needed to do something. And so my sister actually mentioned Airbnb to me, and I thought, you know what, why not? I had nothing to lose at that point. You know, I didn't have a job. I was kind of racking up credit card debt, and I was like, let's just try it. So I had a condo, and that was the only piece of real estate that I owned at the time. So I moved into my best friend's basement and started Airbnb my 2-bedroom kind of college town condo. And I replaced my job income that I had just quit in a month. And I was like, wow, if I can do that in a month with one property, what could I do if I had, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 properties? And so that was the birth of the idea. But the problem is that I had racked up all this credit. I was in no position, you know, I didn't have a job. I was in no position to buy property. And so I actually started working with homeowners and creating win-win relationships with them, and in such a way that they allowed me to Airbnb their homes. And then it just really kind of took off. And I have had 32 properties at one time, and they're all over Colorado. I've even had some in Japan and Arizona as well. So,
oh my God, you are
I got started.
Entrepreneur.
Yes, definitely, and it's been quite an adventure.
This is exactly why this whole interview process makes so much sense, because people like you, you've just blown it out of the water. And, you know, from literally quitting your job to this kind of atmosphere where you run about 32 properties in different countries, man or woman, that is amazing. I'm listening.
Thank you. Yes, yes. And you know, it's been an adventure. So some of your questions are great because you know, I learned everything the hard way. I didn't have a plan going into this. I didn't have a mentor going into this. It really, you know, it was about 3.5 years ago, actually. And 3.5 years ago, it was still a pretty new industry. So there wasn't even a lot of people to ask questions to.
No, I've been in the industry for a long time and I didn't even know about it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So it's still fairly new. People know about it now, but 3.5 years ago, they still didn't. So
Mm, mm. Okay, you mentioned about you rapidly, I'll use the word rapidly without hesitation, you rapidly got yourself a portfolio of properties you're managing. You did say that you created a win-win situation with the homeowners. How did you do that? Because that is the stuff made of dreams that a lot of people want to hear about.
yes. Well, I will be totally honest with you, and I talk about this in my book. My first homeowner, I didn't ask. I
Hmm.
just did, and I quickly got in trouble for that. And he was like, "Well, I mean, he was upset, but what was funny was we kind of renegotiated the terms of our agreement together, and I put in some carrots for him, and very quickly he said, "You know what? At first I was mad at you, but honestly, this is a genius idea." And he actually partnered me with his father as well, who also owned property.
Hmm.
So it was kind of like a skirted emergency. But since then, I have a business model now, and now I work with homeowners and just tell them up front, this is what I'm doing. Some of the homeowners I actually have a lease with, and I am on the lease just like a normal rental, but they work in an agreement with me to be able to Airbnb it, and then they get a percentage of the profits. So we do profit sharing, and then some homeowners, it's just purely profit sharing. But at this point, I have only owned 2 of my 32 properties.
Hmm.
And so you certainly can do this in homes that you don't even own. And that's actually the title of my book,
And
is
what is it called?
Airbnb
Can I see the
Investor
book?
Style.
Have you got it here?
Um, yeah. Can you see me? I didn't know if you could see me.
I
Can
can
you
see
see
you,
me?
yes.
Oh, good. Okay. So it's called Airbnb Investor Style, and it's building wealth with Airbnb, whether or not you own a property. So my whole kind of thing, and what I teach people how to do, is how to do this without even having to own property, because that's how I got started, and that's still what I'm doing. So
Oh my word. Listen, there's 2 schools of thought. One is the master lease
yes,
in the States or Canada, they
yes,
call it master lease. And in the UK, we call it rent to rent, where you rent a landlord's
yes,
property and then you put on Airbnb, whatever, and then you pay the landlord their rent and whatever happens is your business. Then there's the second model,
yes,
which seems to be catching fire now, which is the co-hosting model. Um, I've spoken
right.
to a few people and they say, look, I do that. Another says I do that number one option. Others say, look, it's a mixture, depends on the landlord. How do you do yours?
Yes. It's a mixture. I do the master lease and I do the co-hosting. Um, the master lease is what I started with, though. It's
Hmm.
how I got into this, without having to have my own properties. And then once I kind of realized that, oh, okay, well, now I know how to run 4 or 5 at a time, then I had something to offer people when they asked me about co-hosting. So then the co-hosting side of the business really took off. So I do both at this point.
I see. I see. So if you were to expand your business, your property portfolio, which module do you think is easier for you? And which one do you think actually makes you more revenue?
So I coach people on how to grow their Airbnb businesses. And what I always tell them when they ask me that question, and specifically what they should do, is I really recommend that people start with both. So maybe get your master lease first, get a master lease, but for every master lease you get, I would get 3 or 4 co-hosting properties. And the reason for that is because the master leases make you the big bucks, but in general, the master leases are the ones that are a bit of a roller coaster ride in terms of income. So, I make big bucks during the summer, for example, in the master lease in Colorado properties. But then in the winter, unless they're in a ski town, the income goes down. And so
Mm.
my co-hosting properties really kind of help me ride that wave, because I always make money on my co-hosting properties because I'm not on the hook for the bills and the co-hosting properties. So the homeowners are. So I always recommend you get 3 co-hosting properties for every master lease, and that way you're always making money and you don't have to kind of live the roller coaster of income.
Well, you seem to have this very large smile on your face. It appears everything is going very well with your business. And, you know, Anna, talk to me about how you actually optimize your occupancy.
Sure. Sorry, I wanted to pull up your question so that I can read along while we're doing this. Yeah, so one of the things that I use to do that is a software called Guesty. And Guesty is a software, and there's sort of many of them out there. But basically, my recommendation for folks that are really growing, so if you have 4, 5, 6 or more properties, I would really recommend doing like a channel management software, because what they're going to do is they're going to push your property out to, you know, different platforms. So agoda.com, HomeAway, Booking, Travelocity, yeah. And so that's one way that, you know, once I really started having a lot of properties, then it just became necessary to market them as much as possible. They also give you your own property website. And so, yeah, just market as much to do with listing, changing information on the listings, especially with Airbnb. Every single time that you change anything on a listing with Airbnb, it actually increases the visibility of your property in terms of the algorithm with Airbnb. So there's little tricks like that too that you can employ. HomeAway, you get points every single time you log in. So, you know, you've got to kind of stay active, because all of that really helps the visibility of your properties. And so those are things I do as well.
These are very pertinent things that, you know, tricks, I call it tricks of the trade. They have to know to be able to maximize occupancy. What about communication?
Yeah.
I think it's key in running this business, from the inception of an inquiry to when a guest checks out. What is your involvement in terms of communication? Do you use your channel manager to do the communication, or do you use an application, or what?
So I chose to make this part really personal, and I don't do my communication anymore. It would be more than a full-time job to try to do all of my communication. But I did choose to hire someone to do the communication for my business. And there are ways to automate communication, and there are pieces of it that we are looking into automating. Guesty absolutely has the functionality, and a lot of the channel managers do, but what I find about communication, and for me, it's just so important to have the guests feel a sense of experience. And part of the reason that they're generally choosing to do something like Airbnb or HomeAway as opposed to stay in a hotel is because they don't want that sterile experience, right? And so that was just a choice that I made, was to hire someone to do the guest communication for me. And you know what? It's not that bad of a job. I mean, really, for some people and for my particular employee, that's a dream job, because what I basically offered this individual was the ability to, you know, work from her phone. She doesn't have to come into an office. She's not working 9 to 5. She's working, I mean, it's kind of like almost like a 24-hour on call, right? But she's not working all the time by any means. So for her, it was a perfect opportunity because she likes to travel a lot. So she can do this job while she's traveling.
Are your properties, you did mention Japan, are your properties located in different parts of different states? And also, of course, you've got properties in Japan. How spread are your properties?
They're actually not super spread. I do have a property in Arizona, and I've had that one in Japan. But most of my properties are in Colorado. However, they are in like all over Colorado. So it's not like they're in one city. And so I definitely have a team of people helping me manage all of them, because I am only near about 2 of them, to be honest with you. They're all over Colorado.
So you do have a team, because London, for example, is a huge place. And so if you have properties in North London or East London or South London or West London, that is a trek, and it will take a whole army to be able to manage that. So you do actually have a team that manages.
I do.
That's good. That's good. What about calendar management? So your Guesty, software is able to do all of that for you, is it?
Yep. And some of the platforms will do it automatically, actually. There's a way to hook up, for example, calendar management functions between HomeAway and Airbnb. And for folks just getting into this, I really recommend HomeAway and Airbnb. If you were just on those 2 platforms to begin with, I personally think that's enough, because those are kind of the 2 most popular. And for a very, very long time, for about 2 years of the 3 years, I was only marketing myself on Airbnb, and it was enough. It's just that when I really started wanting to kind of stand out from other people and, prove that if people worked with me, they could improve their occupancy rates, then that's when I started looking into the guest channel management stuff. But really, you could just run this on Airbnb and HomeAway and do just fine.
Oh, wow. There's a school of thought that says that just listing on HomeAway and Airbnb is not enough to get you the maximum occupancy. For example, if your target is 70–80% occupancy, just listing on Airbnb and HomeAway is hope marketing. And therefore, you want to have your own website. Do you have your own website?
I actually don't. And it is something that I'm working on. But like I said, I did not even start really needing all of that until about 2 years into everything. And some of it is a changing market. I will be frank and say that, 3 years ago, just putting things on Airbnb, I mean, it was like 95–99% booked all the time. And I think it was just because there wasn't a lot of competition. And now there is more competition. So you do have to work harder. Like I said, at least get it on HomeAway and Airbnb. But I still have homeowners that say, I don't even need to put it on HomeAway. I'm just going to put it on Airbnb because they get like 99% of their bookings from Airbnb. So, but I do see that changing in the years to come. I think that more and more you'll just have to have things listed on multiple channels because things are getting a little bit more saturated. I definitely see a difference from when it started.
Yeah. There's a lot of competition now. Everybody seems to be joining the bandwagon now, and that leads me to my next question, which is reviews. A lot of people complain, albeit silently, that they put in all the hard work, and a guest comes in one sentence, and then they give them 2 or 3 stars or whatever, and that affects their business. Have you had negative reviews before, or less than 5-star reviews, and how have you managed them?
I mean, yes, I have over 1,000 reviews. So yes, I've definitely had a handful of negative, mostly positive, but the ones that are negative, one of the things that I do with all of my reviews, positive and negative, is try to leave public responses. So people, when they're looking at my listings, can see the interaction between me and my guests. So even the ones that have been negative, I've left a public response. And sometimes there's miscommunication that you can kind of explain, or at least an acknowledgement of their feedback and a promise to improve whatever that specific complaint was about, so that guests can see that you really take, future guests can see that you take feedback seriously. And then I do that with positive reviews too, so that it's not just, oh, she only responds when it's negative. So I think that's a good way of kind of managing it, is to just keep the communication going and to show future guests that you are listening, you do take it seriously. Every once in a while you'll just get a very, rude guest or what have you, but I've truly only had like a handful of those over the years. So.
Oh, wow. Very interesting. That means you must be doing something really, really right, hence your ability and capacity to teach it. What do you get right? Is it the photography? Is it the description? Is it the way you stage the property? Is it the service? Is it the communication? What do you get right to warrant you having more 5-star positive reviews as opposed to negative reviews?
I think the thing that has been always the most important to me, and then ironically, it became even a marketing influence of Airbnb, was this whole idea of the experience. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with the whole Airbnb experience hosting,
yes,
but they actually now are encouraging hosts to create experiences for their guests, and even beyond hosts. But even before Airbnb started talking about the word experience itself, my husband and I have been running this business together, and we just have been very dedicated to creating a sense of experience in each of our homes. And an interaction with the guests. So for example, some of our homes have thank you walls, where literally we have hundreds now of thank you notes posted on the walls that guests can leave when they're there. And it just creates this sense of, one, community, two, a little bit of peer pressure to have a good time because everybody else did. But also interaction with the home. And so people treat it more like it's this living, growing community instead of just some home that they're going to destroy. We've had photography walls where people take pictures of their stay and post it. Thank you journals, as well as, we'll try to leave special experiences depending on the location of the property. For instance, we have some properties that are in ski towns, and we'll leave sleds, ski and snowboard stuff, snowshoes, just things like that, so that it's really more of an experience than just simply a place to stay.
I see. You seem to have thrown a whole different dynamics to this whole business. There's another part of it, which is about superhosts and not being superhosts, because people are killing themselves, running themselves over to become superhosts. Does it really make a difference to be superhost on Airbnb? And for HomeAway, I think it's preferred partner, isn't it? I'm a preferred partner on HomeAway, but hey, it doesn't really make any big difference. Does it make a difference in your business, being a superhost?
Yeah. Well, I will be honest and say that I have gone on and off of being able to be a superhost. And one of the things I've learned, and here's a piece of advice for anyone that's really passionate about being a superhost, if you're going to have multiple properties, 5 or more, once I kind of got into that 20, 30 range, if you have one guest cancellation, and we're talking thousands of guests coming, if you're doing 20 or 30 listings, and you have one cancellation, you cannot be a superhost. So it got harder, obviously, as I got more and more properties to be a superhost. So one recommendation I have, if that's really important to you, is actually to have separate Airbnb accounts for each listing, so that you can actually maintain that superhost status for each individual property, and that might sound like a nightmare, but actually when you use these channel managers like Guesty, you can have multiple Airbnb accounts on there and they all integrate to the same calendars and inbox and everything, so it doesn't have to be complicated. But that being said, that's not what I did, because I didn't know anything about channel management when I first started doing all of this, and so I haven't had Superhost status for basically since I've had 20 or more properties, because it's almost impossible, it feels like. And I mean, I'm still doing good. So I don't know if it's the most important thing, but it certainly feels good. And I do think people look for it. So who knows, maybe my occupancy would be even better if I had done it the way that I am now suggesting other people do. So.
Oh wow, that's very interesting. It is interesting. Anna, are you looking to move outside Colorado and to find properties in other states and other countries? Are you looking to do that? I know you have one in Japan, or a few in Japan, but are you looking to expand your business internationally and interstate, for example?
Yeah, I definitely am always looking for more in Arizona, and I also am looking for some in Florida. And the reason for those two locations is because they have the opposite tourist months that Colorado does. You know, people tend to travel to Arizona, for example, when it cools down a bit, and they stop traveling in Colorado when it cools down. So yeah, to balance my portfolio and my occupancy, I'm looking in those two other locations. But there's plenty of opportunity in Colorado, so I'm not
staying put.
I'm still growing here as well. Yeah.
So your backyard. You want to finish your backyard before you move somewhere else. I think that's the recommendation, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yes, because there's still plenty of opportunity, and there's ski towns here. And, you know, I have a couple in ski towns, but actually the goal of this winter is really to get involved in more and more ski town properties, because they do really well in the winter here. So.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Anna, with your experience, I think you've got a great experience because you manage a lot of properties. A lot of people who were property investing used to usually rent long term. Do you think the short-term rental industry is replacing both institutional hotel industry as well as long-term rental for property investors? Do you think that is what is happening?
Well, I don't think that it'll replace the hotel industry. I think that it's geared towards a different demographic of person. I really do believe that there is still a time and a place for a hotel. And I think that people that, as long as there's a demand, you know, there should be a supply. And I think there is a demand for a hotel. I think some folks really do just want the kind of standard room, the standard process, the standard location of hotels. And so, and you know, if you have like 4 or 5 families wanting to all stay in the same place, that can be nice to have a hotel. There's reasons to have a hotel. So I don't think we'll ever replace the hotel industry. I think one of the things that the hotel industry should do more of to kind of stay in the game is to have more ability to book rooms via apps. I think that was the big thing about Airbnb at the beginning, was that you could literally be driving, you know, walking down the street and book a room by just clicking a button on your app. So I think hotels, they already have, I've noticed. Some have really picked up on that and have started doing some more marketing in that way, but I don't think we'll replace hotels. In terms of long-term rentals, again, there's still a supply, I mean, or a demand. Like, people do need a place to live. So, you know, that's one of the concerns about Airbnb and short-term rentals, is that no one's going to have a place to stay anymore. But I believe that need generates innovation, and so demand generates innovation. So something will happen. Someone will come up with some idea in order to continue to support that demand, because
Yes.
it's there, and it's kind of a concern for people outside of the industry. But to be frank, I mean, I worry about it too. Like, if everybody is doing short-term rentals, where are people going to live?
Yeah.
And we don't want to create a problem for folks. So
Yeah, because
I think it'll get figured out. I really do. I think someone will come up with an innovative way to do long-term renting, and that will be the next thing that blows things out of the park. Maybe I should think about that one.
we would have made our millions already anyway, so who cares?
Exactly.
And there's other areas that I'd just like to pull your attention to, which is regulation. A lot of the local councils, local authorities, and banks, they haven't caught up with the short-term rental industry yet. And in some areas in the States, here in London, for example, there are laws that you cannot rent a short-term rental accommodation for over 90 days continuously. You know, the local authorities and local councils are coming up with regulation. And in some neighborhoods in the States, they're literally just banning short-term rental. Where is the way forward?
So my suggestion to people with regulations is get in now if you want in, because it's just getting more and more regulated. And in every place that is now regulated, that I have Airbnbs in, and I've had them in for a while, I'm grandfathered into the new rules, meaning I don't have to follow the new rules.
Yeah.
Because I was already in operation before they were started. So if you want in this industry, I just really believe that the time is now. Get yourself some properties before the regulations happen. And not all regulations mean an end to it. In most cases, the regulations have meant, you just have to play by their rules, get their license, pay their taxes. And so also pivot, and just work with the new regulations. But if you want to insure yourself to be able to enter into new, get some properties and locations, I just recommend doing it as soon as possible, because regulations are going to just keep growing. But I don't think it's a reason to not get involved. I actually think it's a reason to get involved now, quickly. Go. Yeah.
I see. That's interesting. Finally, Anna, what advice would you give to anyone buying property? For example, if I came to Colorado and I wanted to buy a property, my idea, well, now that I'm in short-term rental, I know what to do. But what would you advise property investors anywhere in the world if they're getting into, they're buying to rent on the short-term market? Should they give it to companies, or what? Should they give it to companies like your one? Or should they do it themselves? Or what ways can they maximize their income?
Yeah. So my number one piece of advice with that is, whether you want to manage the property yourself or not, that's fine. But what I would really strongly recommend getting some professional advice about is which properties are going to do well in the short-term rental market and which ones aren't. And before you buy a property, get some of that professional advice from someone that's been doing this for years and years and years, because I do have tools, for example, that I and my clients use to analyze how much money certain properties are going to bring in, their occupancy rates, and we can kind of do some projections. And those are tools that I've built over the years. They're not things that I would have just been able to know from the get-go. And so, and that is just my hope for people that are wanting to invest in this, is that they really take the time, spend the money to get some professional advice in the very beginning, because that's the baseline of whether it's going to be successful or not. Is, do you have a good property? And everyone gets all enamored with properties, because they look pretty, or They think they're in a good location or whatever, you know, it's not the same as buying a home for you. And so most, or even for a long-term rental. And so most people don't have the correct mindset about what a short-term rental property should look like, where it should be located, what the seasons should be, what the occupancy rates in the area are like, what the costs are. And so I have a system of analyzing all of that to help people not make the wrong decision. And my book is a lot about all the wrong decisions that I made that have taught me to make the right ones. And so you can get a property that won't make you money, that'll just be paying the bills, and you don't want to do that. So invest in the analysis up front, and then decide from there on out if you want to manage it yourself, but at least get yourself a good property.
Wow, that is absolutely fantastic. This is gold nuggets for people who will be watching this, really. And Anna, you've got your book. Would like to talk about a little bit about your book again, and also the services you offer, in case you know, we've got mates and other associates in Colorado, and people are looking as well who are from Colorado, and they might want to just contact you and say, hey, I love what I hear, and I've got a number of properties. Would you, you know, get into partnership with me? So what services do you offer?
Sure. Yep. So I do coaching and also one-on-one calls. And in general, my program for coaching is around helping people find properties, like I talked about, that are really going to make them the money that they're looking for, and then how to keep them filled. You know, the occupancy rates high, get them staged correctly, do some of those experiences I was talking about, and then market them. So how to use some of these channel managers, as well as, you know, getting them staged correctly. And then the last part is how to turn it on autopilot. And that piece is really for folks that are wanting to do, you know, more than 4 or 5 properties, because once you get past a certain number of properties, you have to turn systems on autopilot, or you will go crazy trying to do all of this on your own. And your reviews will suffer. So it's really about keeping your reviews up, keeping it occupied, and that find piece is the most important, which is finding a property that is going to make you a lot of money in the first place, like I said. And so I help people do that. It's a 3-month coaching program that I offer, and people often find me on my Facebook group, Airbnb Investor Style, and ask me about my coaching program that way. But I also do one-on-one calls, you know, one-off calls for just consulting if people just have a couple questions they want to ask. And then, of course, the property management and my book. So,
Yes.
yeah, my book is actually on Amazon.
Right.
Okay. This is it. It's on Amazon. And it's really kind of a raw story of how I got involved in Airbnb, and sort of the trials and tribulations along the way. And along the way, I'm telling people what I learned from my different experiences. So I'm really real, I'm really honest about the things that I did wrong. They're often really funny. You know, my kind of failure stories looking back are hilarious. And so I hope that the book is a bit entertaining, but it's also, okay, this is what I learned from that, you know, that experience, and what you can take away and do better as a new Airbnb investor.
Oh, wow. You know what? I'm going to get you a client right this moment, because in one of the groups I'm at, or I'm in, somebody asked whether there is any person who actually handles beginners because they're looking to get in, and people were fluffing about. And I said, look, I'm going to be doing a course about B&B rental mastery, you know, which you're going to be part of, definitely, whether you say yes or no. You're going to be part of it. But yeah, I can give you the details of the person, and then you can really contact them and see maybe if you can help them.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yes, I love working with newbies That tends to be who I work with, actually, is folks that are just starting out and really need just like a breakdown of how to do this, where to find the properties. Yeah, because I want people to be successful at this. It really did change my life. You know, it gave me the ability to not have to go get a new job. This is what my husband and I do full time. And so it's a bit of I want to help other people do the same thing. If a lot of my clients are quitting their jobs, wanting to retire, you know, needing a different form of income. And so it worked for me. So I want to pass that on to people that are looking for the same thing.
Excellent. Is there a website and contact details we can have of you?
Yeah. The website is airbnbinvestorstyle.com.
Right.
And my email is Anna, ANNA, at airbnbinvestorstyle.com. And probably one of the best ways to contact me is through Facebook. I do have a Facebook group, and it is called Airbnb Investor Style.
Excellent. Excellent. That is excellent. Very good information you've passed on to us. And obviously, we make this public at a later point. But Anna, last question. If you were an animal,
yes,
what animal would you be and why?
Oh, wow. The first thing that came to my mind was a tiger. So I guess I'll say that. You know, I mean, cats, wild cats are bold and they're fast and they're daring. But I also believe that they're probably pretty sensitive, you know, emotional creatures. And I would say that those things are the same about me. You know, I tend to have a lot of guts and go for things that I really believe in. But at the end of the day, you know, I'm human and I want to connect with people and I want to help people. I want my guests to have a good time. I want my clients to really learn. And so, yeah, I guess I would say a tiger.
Oh, fantastic. Excellent. And I can't thank you enough. It's been a pleasure listening to you and your story. I think it's, you know, you need to write another book now that you've become more experienced. I think it will be good to have another book about how you are progressing because a lot of people would like to read your story, which is great. Thank you so much for coming on to this interview.
Yes, and thank you so much for hosting it. And I wish you the best of luck with growing your, it's podcast, right? Are you doing a podcast?
It's going to be a course. Yeah, it's going to be a course. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I wish you the best of luck with that too. Stay in touch.
Thank you very much. All right. Bye-bye.